on, Duke fans. That was a tale of two halves, a crazy game, a lot of things. Um, it was there was a lot of fun, sort of at times. Times it wasn't very much fun, but what a resilient win for Duke to come back in a game in which they were up 13 at halftime, to lose the lead, to be down as much as 6 points with 10 minutes to go in the second half, to be, I think there was 1 of 17 at one point in the second half. They were 2 for 20 with 7 minutes and about 40 seconds to go in the second half. So they were shooting 10% in the second half. And that includes, Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag in the second half at that point was 2 for 5. The rest of the team was 0 for 15. And then they went 6 of 6. Bunch of big shots down the stretch from Mason Gillis. Tyrese Proctor hit a big one. Cooper Flag had game-sealing free throws. He was obviously it wasn't his best game, but when Duke needed it, he was there, and he was the guy. When at one point I think it was like a 14-1 run for Wake Forest, maybe even more, maybe 17-1 run for Wake Forest to start the second half. Wake Forest, after being down 35-22, got the lead to 39-36 Duke. And then Cooper Flag hits a three to tie it. Wake Forest gets up by 6. Coach Shire calls another timeout, which I thought he did a really good job of managing the Wake Forest runs in the second half. And Duke was able to chip away, take the lead back, and win a tough, gritty game at Wake Forest.
Look, in our pregame predictions, I had the score of this game 69-64 with Duke win by 5. And I thought it was going to be a tough game, but I thought we would prevail. And we win by 7, 63-56. So pretty close there with the score and the spread. But clearly not a game. Based on the first half, if you thought we were going to, do that over again in the second half and then walk out of there with a 20-point win, Wake Forest clearly had something to say about it. And the cold shooting, just, all right, first 4-minute segment, okay, we played horrible. I think we got outscored like 6-1 or 5-1.
7-1.
Okay, second 4-minute segment, we're still shooting horrendous. Going into the third segment, it's like, are we going to score a basket? Are we going to play anything this half? And it's like, and it wasn't necessarily, as you pointed out, Jack, that there were some pretty good shots, but in the first 8 minutes, we were just lost, and there was no control, and Wake Forest completely took advantage of that and forged their incredible comeback to, we had a 13-point lead at the half, and then they went up by 6. Game completely turned around. If you notice, they had started bringing down the guys in the yellow shirts with tape to prevent a storming of, a court storming there. Look, it was pretty exciting, to see us come back, and I really, really like Coach Shire's coaching, the decisions, Cooper Flag's steadiness. It was, as we were talking, maybe not necessarily a great game, but a great win in terms of their ability to turn. They thought they'd had the game, and then they didn't, and it was slipping away, and then they came back and won the game, and that was just great, just great.
Duke a year ago would not have won this game, and it has a lot to do with, Mason Gillis. Has really a lot to do with Mason Gillis, more than anybody else. And we talk a lot about the trio of transfers who've been the stabilizers for Duke, and Gillis, James, Brown, and they've all had moments throughout the season, right? Brown, with his defense until he got hurt, was just phenomenal, disruptive. He may still have the lead he probably still has the lead on the team in deflections, and he hasn't played in several weeks now. That's how good he is. Sion James, we all know how important he's been since he moved into the starting lineup with his defense and his ability to just be a table setter and just steady the group. Mason Gillis has been really coming on for the last month, and today, I know Cooper Flagg was the best player. I think we all know that. But really, when it comes down to it, the margins, Mason Gillis won this game with his shooting, especially down the stretch, his rebounding, his defense. He had just an awesome game today. Going back to what you were saying at halftime, I was one of those people who thought maybe we weren't gonna win by 20, but I was like, hey, it's nice. We're gonna beat Wake Forest pretty soundly. It's gonna feel good after last year, and then they turned tables all over us in the second half, and it was just to your point. It wasn't a great performance, but a great win to have that level of resiliency. Because a lot of teams, not to pick on Duke from last year, but just a lot of teams in general. If you're up by 13 at the half, you're on the road. It's a 19-point swing. You've already used 2 timeouts. A lot of times it just keeps going with the momentum of the home team, and you end up losing by 10. And it says a lot about this Duke team that they were able to bounce back and get this win today.
I, I it looked a little dicey there midway through the second half, and I was writing in my notes, this can't happen again. This just can't happen again. And the resiliency of the Duke team and some terrific coaching from Shire with some good substitutions. I think you pointed out the mixing up of going zone and man to man was very, very important down the stretch there. Just, you know, if we should be so lucky to be in the national championship, I will take a great win, a great game over a great win, meaning we don't have to play wonderful to win the national championship. We just have to win by 1. So, Jack, what were the stats in today's game?
Yeah, let's pull them up so everyone can be on the same page here. Let me just make a quick adjustment because I have your part of your face is blocking the points here, and so is mine. So that should do it for everybody. I know you can't see it, but everyone else can. So we were obviously led by Cooper Flagg today with 24 points, 8 of 16 from the field. Didn't have the 3-ball working today. 1 of 6 from 3, but 7 of 9 from the free throw line. He had 7 rebounds, 6 assists. Bad turnover day. Not Cooper's best day. I think we all know that. He had 7 turnovers, 5 in the first half. He had at least 2 off of that spin move that we're all very familiar with at this point. It did work at one point in the second half. He spun off of Tyler Johnson and got a nice finish in the lane over Efton Reed. But it's kind of funny to say it clearly wasn't Cooper Flagg's best day. He still had 24.7 rebounds and 6 assists. The guy is phenomenal. And our next league score was Con Knipple. And a lot of the things I just said about Cooper Flagg, you could say about Con in terms of it clearly wasn't his best day. He still had 15 points on 5 of 12 shooting. He was 3 for 7 from 3. He was only 2 for 4 from the free throw line, which is very uncharacteristic of Con. I said 15 points, I believe. May have forgot. 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 turnovers for Con. 12 of the 16 Duke turnovers came from Con and Cooper, which makes sense. They have the ball a lot more than everyone else, but just far too many, and that's the reason why this was as close as it was. I felt like some of them were forced by Wake Forest, and I felt like some of them were unforced by Duke. Kind of like a mix and match of each. And I also think some of it was the environment. We were a little bit unsettled, especially as in the second half, the first few minutes of the first half. So I think towards the end of the game, it was better. but we just didn't really find a flow, especially offensively. But I
And
want go
and
ahead.
Jack, even down the stretch, when we wanted to put the game away, uh, there was this moment when Cooper Flagg went 1 for 2 with his free throws, followed by Khan going 1 for 2 with it free throws until Flagg then at the end did hit 2 for 2 from the free throw line. But that moment there where they could have sealed it, both of them also back ended the misses. So uh, 12 turnovers between the two of them is a startling statistic. And yet, on the other hand, they played. It's very difficult to say. It's like 12 turnovers, and that would be horrible. And yet they combined to play and put up some really good numbers, rebounding, assists, points. So, okay, keep going, bud.
So our third player in double figures today, and the only other player in double figures scoring, was Mason Gillis off the bench. 11 points, 3 3-pointers. He had 6 rebounds today off the bench. He again, great, phenomenal Mason Gillis game. We've seen it. He's been getting better and better, more comfortable at Duke over the last month, and his importance was just, it's hard to put into words today how impactful he was. And speaking of impactful, Tyrese Proctor, if you look at the box score, you see 6 points. He did have 8 rebounds. I noticed him getting a bunch of rebounds today, but I didn't quite realize how many. He had 2 assists, 2 steals. Honestly, none of that really mattered to me. I thought his defense on Hunter Salas, especially in the first half, was just outstanding. He didn't give him any space. He was on him the entire time, off the ball, on the ball. It didn't matter. Salas had 4 points in the first half, and they were both
Four
dunks
points.
on fast break opportunities. And it was just all Tyrese Proctor. His defense has been great all year, but today against a guy like Hunter Salas, who he finished with 12 points. He had a hot start to the second half. He had 5 quick points, but he really he was 1 for 3 from the free throw line. Proctor just did a great job defensively on him. Malawach, I thought, got off to a good start physicality wise. Was doing his thing. He had 3 rebounds and 2 blocks today, but he just couldn't stay out of foul trouble. It was something that you alluded to in the preview could be a problem for Duke, and it wasn't, because Pat Gangba had some great minutes today for Duke. He was good defensively, he was good offensively, and we didn't have Malik Brown. There was no one else to turn to. We couldn't go small really with Efton Reed on the court. So Gangba was another guy who, yes, you look at the numbers, Flagg, Knipple, Gillis with their scoring, but I think Proctor and Gangba were really impactful today with their defense and just ability to impact the game without scoring. Sion James had 3 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. I didn't, he hit the 1 3-pointer. I didn't think it was his best day. Thought he was solid defensively, but just we didn't get a lot from him offensively, and I didn't think his defense was, as great as like a Proctor. Last couple guys, just in terms of the stat sheet, Evans played limited minutes today, had a couple rebounds. I thought he was, fighting defensively. He had a couple rebounds, as I mentioned. And Foster had 2 rebounds and an assist. He did have a turnover and a couple fouls. I thought there was a moment that was noteworthy to me. Early in the second half, I wrote it down. I was like 14:45. He had Flagg passed it to him, and he had an opportunity to shoot an open three, and he didn't.
He didn't.
And the bench, it was one of the few times I've seen the bench like really react, like they were upset. I didn't see the coaches, but I noticed Gillis and Evans were like kind of, they were upset they didn't shoot it. That was the frustration. And so to me, it says a lot about where Caleb Foster's confidence is right now, and I'm not sure how to get him back on track confidence wise because it's been a tough year for Foster so far, and how Shire manages that moving forward, I think, will be important, especially as we play. I mean, this is one of the better teams in the conference, so I think it is something to monitor moving forward.
I would say that when I was doing the 3 things to look for, and I was trying to think, I thought we were going to have to rely on Sion and Mason, and I made the comment saying I would like to say it's Caleb Foster, but he is during Coach Shire's Monday interview with local sports reporters, and he was asked, "How do what are you going to do about Caleb?" He said, "I really." Always expressing confidence in his players, but that he felt that this is now about mental toughness. This is about, and how do you recapture that? And I think he has to have a breakout game to restore his confidence, but I no longer see which game that's going to be in, because it's more likely to me that Mason Gillis continues his trajectory as a veteran, and that Isaiah Evans, doesn't shy away. He also shied away from I thought he had an open 3, but quick draw's got to be able. That's what he's out there for. So I think that Caleb is falling in the depth chart, and that's unfortunate.
I agree, except the first 2 guys off the bench today were Foster and Gillis.
Yep.
So I've thought he was falling down the depth chart, but as of late, he's been one of the first guys off the bench. I get him and Sion, their job is to dribble the ball up the court, and then where's Cooper? And then go to the corner. Basically, that's the job of the point guard. And so, with that, being said, I do think, to your point, there is an opportunity to get Evans more minutes over Foster. That's really the competition as far as I'm concerned. Are there any players or storylines that we didn't talk about before I go to the chat?
Um, I thought, as it was a vengeance game for us, and the beginning of the North Carolina vengeance tour, the first half was just a great half of basketball. The defense, I mean, not offensively, but our defense was just phenomenal in the first half, and it said a lot. It was a statement to go into Wake Forest and do that. But then I'm not quite certain. I do know that it was Salas that controlled that first segment. He hit shots. He had nice pass. I thought he was going to take off from there, and then we just couldn't get on track shooting. But so there's that, and I don't know so much about someone, some individual, because overall 17-2, 9-0 in the ACC. So we continue to run the table, and but I don't think it's any individual that I'll point out there, and I'll save that for when we give out the gold, silver, and bronze awards for some more comments about it.
All right. So then I guess on my end, before we go to the chat, I want to give credit to a couple of Wake Forest players who stepped up today, played above their typical level. First, Juke Harris, who had a great game. He was their leading scorer off the bench. As far as I'm concerned, it kind of puts to rest the questions over, what would have happened if Hildreth didn't get into foul trouble, because I think his production kind of would have been what Hildreth would have done. And it's not like, also in fairness, it's not like Hildreth was injured or the fouls were like unjust. If anything, I thought he could have fouled out sooner. Um, but nah, that's neither here nor there. And then Tyler Johnson, he had a great game for them, setting the table. To your point, it was Salas who got them going in the second half, but I think it was Johnson's ability to penetrate and find other guys. He had 8 assists in a game in which Wake Forest had 56 points, but more importantly, he had 8 assists a game after Wake Forest as a team only had 7. So, that says a lot about how well he played today against Duke. So let's turn to the chat. So first off, before I start reading any of the chat, thank all of you guys for leaving your comments in the chat, in the post game, the pre-game. It's been awesome as we've built with you guys, and it's been a lot of fun. You've made it way more fun for us. So Pay the Piper says, way too close for my liking. Yeah, that sounds right. Quality Touch. Yo, I have a headache. That seems fair. Especially those first 10, 12 minutes. It was brutal. It was brutal. Pay the Piper. Shooting troubles were apparent in the first 10 minutes of the second half. Turned things around with timely threes thanks to Coop and Gillis.
Spot on.
And again, Duke doesn't win this game if facing a team with better shooting percentage. Way too many turnovers and most steals I've seen Duke give up. That needs to improve. Yeah, I agree, especially with your point on the better shooting percentage, because this Wake Forest team was one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the conference. I've been pretty consistent that I think Duke's weakness defensively has been three-point shooting. And if a team can combine, a defense like Wake Forest with better shooting, that would be we've kind of seen that with Kentucky, the Kentucky game. They had a good defensive performance in the second half. They had good three-point shooting, more or less, and that's kind of the recipe to beat Duke. I see that, and we've got to be better with the turnovers. The one thing I will say, though, is for most of the year, we've been pretty good at not turning the ball over.
Although Coop had a fairly recent game also with a high number of turnovers. So
he did.
Maybe he's got to go back and spend some time with Dad again and work on that aspect of his game as he continues to dominate in other areas. But, I also think that there's this adjustment with Malik Brown out is causing a little disruption in how they're playing. So if they're playing against a good three-point shooting team, they'll go out further because they just know Malik is just a defensive stopper in there. He's not there. Mal gets into a little bit of foul trouble. No alley-oops to Mal. They didn't even try it today, which was sort of amazing to me. Maybe the only game I could think of.
A little bit more difficult, the matchup today, because
I know,
but size.
Yeah, but I agree. I absolutely agree with the size. But usually there is at least one opportunity where he's gonna get free and do it.
I think part of the reason is he unfortunately wasn't on the court as much as normally due to the foul trouble. So I think there were just less opportunities.
Right. So that means Gangba is not going to give us offense. 4 points.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I think Gangba actually, I don't know how I want to say this. He's got a little more touch around the rim than Mal.
Oh, absolutely.
He's a much better defender, but Gangba has, he has some touch around the basket. I just think today Wake Forest did a good job of pressuring the ball and making it hard to get that quick pass down low for like either an alley-oop. It was just a little bit more difficult to find the big man with the way Wake Forest defended today.
Agreed.
All right. We've got a few more. Pay the Piper again. Shout out Pay the Piper. Thank you. positive they managed to stay the course and prevail against a physical Wake team. Spot on. Spot on. Our guy, Lawrence Freeman. Mason was huge tonight. Solid minutes from Big Pat. 100%. Pay the piper again. Good experience for this young team. Lawrence Freeman. This was the test that every analyst in college basketball has been wondering if we could pass. Well, we did. 20-0 regular season. Hey, Lawrence, you were talking about that a long time ago now. So we're almost halfway there. We've got a number of tests as I've been saying. I still think that Clemson game is the one that concerns me the most, but one game at a time, as a coach would say.
And no matter what, I think the game at UNC, it'll be some guy who comes off the bench and hits 5 threes. It's just inevitable that will be a game. And the Clemson game, as you've always been pointing out, are clearly going to still get in the way, Lawrence, of maybe that 20-0 run. But I'm with you. I am, I want to run the table, and that's 9.
That's 9. And pay the piper to close us out. Coach mixing things up, switching to zone, to stop the bleeding. Lesson learned from Coach K. Yeah, I thought it was a great move by Shire to mix that in at the end of the game. It clearly changed the rhythm of the game, and it was a smart adjustment because I guess at a certain point you can't just keep doing the same thing, right? Like you got to try something. So it's a good move. These are also from Pay the Piper. Hit that like button, peeps. I agree. Hit that like button. Leave a comment. Hit us up in the chat. Share with a friend. All that good stuff. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do so.
Hey, hold on. Gold, silver, bronze.
We're not done. We're not done.
Oh, that's usually your summary to do all of that at the end.
I know, but Pay the Piper gave me a good. It was a nice. He threw up the lob. I had to take it. What can I say? It was a nice assist. And then finally, I don't know if you caught this. I was watching this early. It was just as the Duke game was starting. So I don't know if you saw this, JD. BC had UNC beat and absolutely blew it with the inability to successfully inbound the last 3 plays of the game. Sad as that would have guaranteed NIT for UNC. It was painful to watch BC in the last. It took them like 10 or 12 seconds to get the ball into the half court and then call timeout. They couldn't inbound the ball. It was a semi-disaster over there.
Where was the game?
At North Carolina. BC had a chance to win. It was like 89-89. Once they didn't, I kind of knew UNC would win in overtime, but it has been a tough year for the Tar Heels. But listen, throw all that out the window. When Duke plays North Carolina, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's going to be a close game. That's what I think. Will it be? I have no idea, but that's what I think. They typically are.
All right, let's get to it.
Yeah.
Who's your gold?
Gold, Cooper Flagg. I think he will be the gold 9 times out of 10 for Duke throughout the rest of the season. Yes, he had 7 turnovers, but there's no world where Duke wins this game without Cooper Flagg's performance.
As they like to say, he's the gold standard.
Certainly is. If we were keeping track of, I know we started this a few games into the year, but he would probably have, 14 gold medals right at this point. Silver. I'm going with Mason Gillis. I thought his threes were timely, especially the one late, which I thought, how do I want to say this more appropriately? It took a lot of confidence, I guess is how I want to say it, to shoot that 3 early in the shot clock from the corner. Yes, it was an open shot, but, a lot of times you may want to pass it out, take time off the clock. And I think it's one of those where it goes in. Great shot, Mason. Amazing. If he misses, what were you thinking? We should have, right? It's one of those. So, and bronze, I'm going with Tyrese Proctor. I thought his defense was outstanding on Hunter Salas. I know he was 2 for 12. He missed a lot of shots. I thought they were good shots, but I just think his defense set the tone for this Duke team, holding Wake Forest to 22 points in the first half. And he was a leader today. He also had 8 rebounds and just was really important for Duke to get this win over Wake Forest. Yes, I know that means I left Con Knipple off the podium. I know he had 15 points. I know he had 9 rebounds and 3 assists. And he was our second best offensive player. I just felt like there was too many times today where his confidence wasn't right and he looked a little bit shaky on the ball. And it was a bounce back performance from what he did against Boston College, but we need him to be even better moving forward. As who said this? I want to make sure. I think it was Pay the Piper. As Pay the Piper said, too many turnovers overall from Duke, and a lot of it was Khan and Cooper. Cooper, I guess I'm giving more of a pass because he just has a bigger workload. And he just is phenomenal. I don't know what else to say. And Khan was good, but it was like good, bad, and I felt like yes, Cooper had the turnovers, but he was a little bit more consistent overall, even though there were certainly some bad stretches from Cooper in this game.
So, Jack, you've mentioned it a couple of times, the individual rebound total. Do you happen to have in front of you the team rebound total?
Yes, give me 1 second. So it was a blowout. At one point early on, I don't know if you caught this. It was like 9-0. Okay.
I did. And so I want to make a point out of this if I'm right.
Well, you're right. Team. Let me see. I'm gonna do it this way actually. Wake Forest, 29 rebounds. Duke, okay. 48.
Okay. Hold that stat for a second. Total turnovers team to team.
16 for Duke, 10 for Wake Forest.
So we absolutely dominate the board in a game in which you out-rebound the other team by 20 points. This, you would think you should have control of the game. And the only thing that gets in the way of that are the turnovers, especially by the guys who you're going to put the ball in their hands. And so it's going to be Coop and it's going to be K2 that are going to commit way too many turnovers. So I'm not going to say it negates it. It kept us in the game. But to out-rebound the other team by 20 points, 20 rebounds, and then be there in a close contest, it's just hard to. I mean, go get them, boys. I mean, it's a great aggressive stat that you could out-rebound the other team by 20 points. But then to have this be, a headache, as one of the comments said, you got to wonder what was it. But the aggressiveness. And what about total fouls, Jack?
It ended close in part because towards the end of the game, Wake had to foul a few times, right?
Exactly.
So it ended with Duke with 22, Wake Forest 19. The one thing I will say, because sometimes you look at the number of fouls, you're like, was the whistle fair? The one thing I will say to that, Duke shot 32 3-pointers, Wake Forest shot 18. So, when you're shooting a lot more threes, it's harder to draw as many fouls. But especially in the first half, there was a lot of times where, I'll just say this: the refs changed the way that they were calling the game at least twice in this game, which for me, all I'm looking for is consistency. And that was the one thing that did bother me today.
What was Duke's percentage from 3-point range?
9 for 32. I wish I had the number, when Duke was 2 for 20 in the second half, because Gillis, I think, had 2 threes in the last 8 minutes, and I know Proctor had one. And maybe Coop had one too. No, Coop's was earlier. So
So 9 for 27 would be 33%. So we may have shot under 30% from three,
oh,
which
we
is
were we were 28%.
28%, right? Which is, we are a much better 3-point shooting team. And that's certainly, we kept saying that it's just not dropping and the shots look good. So that is another aspect of this game.
To your point, I think that was one of the reasons this game was closer. Is yes, Wake Forest defense was good, especially in the second half. But I do feel like, especially Tyrese Proctor, missed a lot of shots he typically would make. However, as Mr. Freeman has pointed out in the past, some of that you could credit to the fact that he was playing an outstanding level of defense, and maybe he didn't quite have his legs, because a lot of his shots were in the second half.
Right.
The one thing,
It's fair.
I mean, and this isn't a criticism. I want to make sure I'm saying that before I get to my point, but this has been a semi-consistent thing with Proctor, and it's like what? And this is not a criticism, but like, what level of conditioning does he need to get to be able to play at that level on defense and still have his legs to shoot? Like, I guess you look at the NBA. There's not there most guys are like, he's like a 3-and-D guy basically for Duke, right? He shoots. It's not like he has to handle the ball on offense. It's Khan, it's Cooper, or Sion. So it's most of the time he's spotting up and shooting, or moving and shooting. So it's just something I've been kind of pondering. I'm not sure what the answer is.
Well, as we said, maybe not the best game for Duke, but certainly a great win on the road. And all I could say is I don't want to be in the film room when Coach Shire takes them through the second half of this game.
Well, especially those first 12 minutes. It's going to be brutal. And he doesn't have very much time, and neither do we, because there's a quick turnaround. Monday night, Duke plays NC State. Neither team has to travel very far, as they're both staying in North Carolina. I believe, let me double check, that will be a home game for the Dukies. So North Carolina State will have to make the 20-minute drive over to Durham from Raleigh. And they had a home game today, which they lost to SMU. So we will have that preview tomorrow afternoon. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll be live post game after NC State. Already did all of our like, share, subscribe, all of that. So the only thing I will add at this point is we are available on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. So if you're on the road and you can't watch on YouTube, we will be available for you via podcast. So be on the lookout. It's just Talking Ball, and we will see you guys tomorrow.